342,000 miles. That's what the odometer said on the Altima that rolled into my bay this morning. Original engine, original transmission, and the owner has spent less on it in 15 years than most people spend on one transmission replacement. Meanwhile, the car in the next bay over has 89,000 miles and needs $4,000 of work. Same model, same year. The difference wasn't luck, and it wasn't the factory. It was everything that happened after the sale, and one of those two owners was doing something almost nobody does. I'll show you exactly what before this is over. Do yourself a favor and hit subscribe before we go further. Every week I put out one video that pays for itself, and if you own a Nissan, that's the cheapest insurance money can buy. I'm Dale. 27 years turning wrenches, the last 19 almost entirely on Nissan and Infiniti. I started in a dealership service department, got tired of what I was being told to sell people, and opened my own shop. So I've seen both sides of the counter. I've seen the car that dies at 90,000, and I've seen the one that crosses 300,000 with the original everything. Today, I'm walking you through a single day in my shop, 5 cars, 5 lessons, and by the end, you'll have the whole template, the schedule, the habits, and the stuff you can flat out ignore, no matter what the service advisor says. Let's start with that 342,000-mile Altima, because the lesson is boring, and it's the most important one in this entire video. The owner is a retired postal worker. He drives it to the grocery store, to his daughter's place 2 states over, and to my shop twice a year, like clockwork. He doesn't baby it. He doesn't wash it. But he has one folder in his glove box, and in that folder is every receipt going back to the day he bought it. Oil changes, every single one, right on schedule. Transmission fluid drained and refilled on an interval he picked himself and never skipped. Coolant, done. Spark plugs, done at the interval in the manual, not 50,000 miles later when the engine started stumbling. That's it. That's the whole trick. He never let a fluid go past its life. Here's the thing about a car engine and a car transmission. They are not destroyed by mileage. They are destroyed by contamination and heat, and every fluid in your car exists to fight one or both of those. Fresh oil carries heat away and holds dirt in suspension. Old oil is a slurry of metal and carbon that turns into varnish on the surfaces you cannot reach. Fresh coolant protects the metal. Old coolant becomes acidic and eats water pumps and radiator necks from the inside. Fresh transmission fluid holds pressure and pulls heat out. Old transmission fluid is a hot brown liquid that has stopped doing either of those jobs. Nothing on a Nissan dies of old age. It dies of neglect wearing a costume. So here's the schedule, and I want you to actually write it down. Engine oil, at the interval in your owner's manual, using the weight your manual specifies. Not the shop's number, not the sticker on the windshield, your manual. If you do a lot of short trips, a lot of idling, or you live somewhere brutally hot, use the severe service interval. Almost everyone reading their manual thinks they're a normal driver. Most of you are severe service drivers and don't know it. Cost, if you do it yourself, the price of oil, and a filter. At a decent independent, it's routine money. This is the single cheapest thing you will ever do for your car, and the one most likely to save the engine. Coolant, replaced on the interval in your manual with the correct Nissan spec coolant, not the green stuff from a bargain bin. Wrong coolant will attack the wrong metals, and you'll be buying a water pump you didn't have to buy. Shop level job for most people, and worth it. Brake fluid. This one gets skipped by 90% of owners. Brake fluid absorbs water out of the air. Water in a hot brake system turns to steam, and steam compresses. And that's a soft pedal on a mountain road. Flush it on schedule. It's a modest bill, and it's a safety item, so this one's a shop job unless you know exactly what you're doing. Spark plugs and air filters. On the interval, not when it starts running rough. A misfiring engine is dumping raw fuel past the rings and cooking the catalytic converter. A converter costs real money. A set of plugs does not. And then the big one, the transmission. If you drive a Nissan built in the last 15 years or so, there's a very good chance you've got a CVT, a continuously variable transmission built by Jatco. There's no set of gears in there. There's a steel belt squeezed between two cone-shaped pulleys that change diameter, and the entire thing survives on hydraulic pressure and the fluid that makes it. Heat is the killer. Heat thins the fluid. Thin fluid means less clamping force. Less clamping force means the belt starts to slip against the pulley faces, and slipping generates more heat. That's a loop. And once it starts, it doesn't stop. It ends with pulley surfaces polished slick, metal in the fluid, and a repair bill that typically lands somewhere in the $3,500 to $5,000 range at a dealer. The fluid is the only thing standing between you and that. It has to be the correct Nissan CVT fluid, NS2 or NS3 depending on your generation. Never generic ATF. Never compatible fluid out of a jug that lists 40 applications on the back. I've torn down transmissions filled with that stuff, and the inside looked like a coffee grinder. And if a service advisor ever tells you the fluid is lifetime and never needs changing, ask him whose lifetime he's talking about. Because it isn't yours, and it sure isn't the transmission's. Now, pause the video right here and do one thing. Go to nhtsa.gov, punch in your VIN, and look at what comes back. It's free and it's current. Nissan extended the CVT warranty on a number of models, and the problem years cluster hardest around 2013 through 2018 on the Altima, Sentra, Versa, Rogue, and Pathfinder. If your car is on a list, you want to know that today, and not the week after coverage runs out. Go do it. I'll wait. All right, car number 2. Second bay this morning was a Rogue. And this is where we stop talking about the schedule and start talking about you. The owner is a nice woman with a 9-minute commute. 9 minutes twice a day, 5 days a week for 6 years. Almost no highway, and her CVT is done. Now, she did her fluid changes. She showed me the receipts. She wasn't lying. So why is the transmission slipping at 80-something thousand miles when a postal worker's Altima went 4 times that? Because of how the car was used. A short trip is the most abusive thing you can do to a modern car, and nobody tells you that. On a cold start, the engine oil is thick. The fuel mixture runs rich, and raw fuel washes down the cylinder walls into the crankcase. That fuel dilutes your oil and drops its ability to protect. Then you shut the engine off before it ever reaches full operating temperature. So the moisture and fuel that got into the oil never boils off. It just sits there. Do that twice a day for 6 years, and your clean oil is a chemistry experiment. Same story for the transmission from the other direction. The CVT wants to be at a proper operating temperature. Too cold, and the fluid is thick and slow. Too hot, and it's thin and useless. Constant short trips in stop-and-go traffic never let it settle into the middle, and stop-and-go is exactly where a CVT works hardest, because it's constantly adjusting clamping pressure to hold that belt. So, here's the habits list, and these cost you nothing. Give it 30 seconds to a minute after a cold start before you drive off, not 10 minutes of idling. That's just fuel dilution in slow motion, 30 seconds. Then drive gently for the first few miles. Let the fluids come up to temperature under light load. That is the single highest value free habit there is. Once a week or so, take it on a real drive. 20 minutes on the highway, steady speed, everything up to temperature. It boils the moisture out of the oil. It circulates the transmission fluid properly. It runs the exhaust hot enough to keep the catalytic converter clean. If your commute is 9 minutes, that highway run isn't optional. It's part of your maintenance schedule. Accelerate smoothly from a stop. On a CVT, a hard stab from a dead stop is the worst possible request. You're asking the belt to hold maximum torque at the exact moment clamping pressure is still building. That's where slip happens, and slip is where the damage starts. And stop riding the brake down long hills and drive. Let the transmission and the engine hold you back, and don't do the thing where you creep forward in traffic with your foot half on the gas and half on the brake. Every one of those little arguments between the engine and the brakes is heat going into a transmission that's already fighting for its life. Now, this next one is the reason I actually made this video, so stay with me. Car 3, right before lunch, a Sentra towed in. Owner had been hearing a whine for about 4 months, a whine that changed with vehicle speed, not engine speed. He turned the radio up. He is now looking at a full transmission replacement, and if he'd come to me in month 1, there's a real chance we'd be talking about a fluid service and a cooler instead. The habit that kills more Nissans than any driving style is this: getting used to a symptom. Cars talk. A whine that rises with speed. A shudder at light throttle around 40. A delay of a beat or two between shifting into drive and the car actually moving. A hot, sharp smell after a long climb. None of those are the car being quirky. Every one of them is a system telling you it's outside its design envelope, and every one of them is cheaper today than it will be next month. I'm not telling you to panic at every noise. I'm telling you to investigate every new noise. There's a difference. New sound, new smell, new vibration. That's data, free data. Use it. And here's a related habit that costs almost nothing and saves engines. Pop the hood once a month. You don't need to be a mechanic. Look at the oil on the dipstick. Is it low, and is it the color of maple syrup or the color of a road? Look at the coolant reservoir. Is it between the lines? Look under the car where you park. Is there a spot? And what color is it? 5 minutes a month. That's the entire inspection. The number of engines I've buried because someone drove 3,000 miles on 1.5 quarts of oil is a number I don't want to say out loud. Now let's talk about the other half of this, which is the money you should not be spending. Because there's a whole industry built around the idea that maintenance means buying whatever's on the printed menu, and it doesn't. Car 4 this afternoon was a Murano, and the owner brought me a quote from a dealership visit: $1,100. He wanted to know what on that list was real. About 1/4 of it was. Here's what to ignore and what to say when they push. Engine flush. They'll tell you it cleans out the sludge. What it actually does is dump a strong solvent into an engine with 100 and some thousand miles of deposits. Break those deposits loose all at once and send them looking for somewhere to go. Sometimes they find an oil passage. On a healthy engine that's had regular oil changes, there's nothing to flush. On a neglected engine, it's a gamble with your oil pump. What you say back? I'll pass. I'd rather just do a couple of short interval oil changes. Fuel injection service, sold at every visit. Modern fuel already contains detergents. If the car is running well, has no misfire, no rough idle, no fuel trim problem, you're paying for a can of cleaner and 40 minutes of labor. If it genuinely has a running issue, that's a diagnosis, not a menu item. What you say back? Are you selling this because you found a problem or because it's on the list? Watch what happens to the answer. Throttle body cleaning at every service. Once in a long while, on a car with a genuinely dirty throttle body and a rough idle, sure. As a routine line item every 12 months? No. Nitrogen in the tires. The air you're breathing right now is already about 78% nitrogen. Skip it. Check your tire pressure once a month instead, which is free and which actually matters for your fuel economy, for your tire life, and for your safety. And the cabin air filter. This one isn't a scam exactly. You should replace it. It's just that in most Nissans, it lives behind the glove box. It takes about 10 minutes. The part is cheap, and it's frequently marked up to a number that makes me laugh out loud. Search your model. Watch a 2-minute video. Do it yourself. Here's the rule underneath all of it. Maintenance replaces things on a schedule. Repair fixes things that are broken. Anything sold to you as maintenance that isn't on a schedule in your owner's manual deserves a question, and the question is always the same. Show me what you found. A good shop will walk you out to the car and point. I do it 20 times a week. A shop that can't show you anything is selling you a subscription, not a service. And this cuts both ways, so let me be fair. There are line items people ignore that are absolutely real. Transfer case and differential fluid on an all-wheel drive Rogue or Pathfinder, real, on schedule, and skipped constantly. A transmission cooler on a car that tows or sits in traffic in a hot climate, real and cheap compared to what it prevents. Timing chain noise on the 4-cylinder engines. That rattle on cold start is not just how they sound, and it's worth a real diagnosis. And if you're shopping used and you want the easy path, the VQ35 V6 has been the durable hero of that lineup for a long time, and the older 4-cylinder trucks and the Frontier from 2005 on have gone the distance again and again. Though on the earlier ones, ask specifically about the radiator issue that could contaminate the transmission fluid, because that one's real and it's ugly. Last car of the day, and it brings us all the way back. It's the postal worker again. He came back at 4 to pick up his Altima, 342,000 miles. And I asked him straight out, "What do you think you did?" He said, "Nothing. I just never let it get bad." That's the whole video. He never let it get bad. He didn't have a special car, and he isn't a mechanic. He changed the fluids before they were spent, not after. He drove it far enough and often enough to get it warm. He looked into every noise the first week he heard it. And he spent his money on the things in the manual instead of the things on the menu. So the schedule is oil, coolant, brake fluid, plugs, filters, and the correct Nissan CVT fluid. Every one of them at the interval in your manual, and not a mile past. The habits are 30 seconds of warm-up, gentle first miles, 1 real highway run a week, smooth acceleration from a stop, and a 5-minute look under the hood once a month. And what you ignore is engine flushes, routine injection service, throttle body cleaning on a menu, nitrogen, and any line item nobody can walk you out to the car and show you. Do that, and 300,000 miles isn't a miracle. It's just Tuesday. Because nothing on a Nissan dies of old age. It gets neglected to death, one skipped service at a time, and you're the only one who can stop it. Now, I mentioned that whine on the Sentra, and how the owner had been listening to it for 4 months. Your transmission tells you it's dying long before it dies, and it uses about 4 specific sounds to do it. I made a video that walks through every one of them, so you'll know exactly what you're hearing and how much time you've got. Go watch that one next.